welcome Dr. Jairam for IPF exclusive video interview.
Thank you, Rakesh.
To start with, today LG is one of the leading global players in the air compressors market. How do you describe this journey?
Well, our journey has been for a very long time. It has been going on for the last 20, 25 years. It really started with the opening up of the economy, Indian economy in the early 90s, where the licensing system was dismantled and India was integrated into the rest of the world. And at that time, we realized that on one hand, there is a huge opportunity for us globally. On the other hand, if we are not a globally relevant player, we will not be alive even in the Indian market, because most of our competitors in India are multinational global players. So we had to be, at the very least, as good as them, if not better than them. So that's when our journey started. And if you look at any business or any business, the global opportunities are exponentially higher than the Indian opportunity. And that made a lot of sense for us too. But to take a India-focused business and to transform it to be a globally centric business and organization, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a very long process, especially in manufacturing of capital equipment. So we had to lay a lot of foundation on our technology, our product development, our manufacturing systems, our people systems. So all this took a long time because it was transformational change, transactional changes. So and really our credible growth into international markets has really been only in the last maybe 8 to 10 years. And in this 8 to 10 years, we've been able to establish ourselves quite credibly in all the difficult markets. We're not talking about selling sporadically into Africa or Middle East or Latin America. This is about sustained presence and growth in some of the most difficult markets like Europe or the US or Australia. And we have demonstrated that. And that's the journey that will continue for the organization.
So, during your rise on the global landscape, what are the challenges did you face and how did you overcome these challenges?
So, as part of laying the foundation to, I call it the right to play. You need to first lay the foundation for the right to play. And that means getting your technology levels up to a point where you just not have the know-how, but you also have the know-why of the technology, right? So to do that takes time, and it takes a lot of partnership. You make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you need to build enough stamina within the organization to withstand and actually encourage these failures. And that's where you learn from. So technology was a very big foundation challenge, and we had to do it not by licensing, because licensing means you'll be restricted to India. We had to build it on our own, and which meant that partnering with different people, different organizations, different universities all over the world, and building it piece by piece. So that was a big challenge. The second challenge is, quality. In order to compete in markets globally, and especially for an unknown brand and a made in India label, failure is just not acceptable. So it's not about making products to very high standards, but making products that are better than the best. So to transform an organization which is not used to that standards of quality, in terms of process, in terms of people mindset, was another big transformational change that we had to go through. And then finally, it is about strategy. You can't be a global player by being everything for everybody all over. So you have to make some very deliberate choices in which products you want to focus on, which markets you want to focus on. So that is a learning, it's a learning journey. You make some mistakes, you think this is the right way, and you change it. So now we are firmly on the saddle on all these three dimensions, and we are moving along.
How is the market for air compressors in India, and which end user industries are the key demand drivers for your products?
So I'm going to talk about the pre-COVID-19 period, because right now there is no question of talking about demand. On a steady state basis, India represents, in our estimate, close to about 5 to 6% of the global market. Air compressor compressed air is a utility, and the air compressor provides that utility. It's like a generator. It generates electricity, and electricity is a utility, right? So just about every manufacturing industry company needs compressed air, and therefore it needs compressors. So it's a good thing in our business, because we are not dependent on any one industry as a big contributor for our business, and therefore the risks are lower. So I can't think of even one industry that contributes to more than maybe 3 or 4% of our revenue.
So what do you bring to the table to your customers?
So if you look at a compressor, the biggest life cycle cost in a compressor is energy consumption. Close to 75% of the life cycle cost of a compressor is energy. And compressed air itself is not a very efficient source of energy. It has got a lot of other virtues like safe, easy to transport, easy to use, but it's got inefficiency. So our value proposition to our customers is we bring some of the best efficiencies in the world. And therefore, when they buy and use our compressors, the savings are pretty significant. And the second thing is, if you look at the second dimension of life cycle cost is the maintenance cost. And our compressors have the lowest maintenance cost in the world. So combine these two, the customer's value proposition is very high.
So how is LG embracing new technologies like advanced automation, IoT, etc., into its manufacturing?
I think if you take the digitization as a new kind of a direction that the whole world is pursuing, we need to pause and consider what exactly is digitization. You can't do digitization for the sake of digitization. Digitization is an enabler of the company's operations and strategy. So you need to understand what are all the biggest either pain points or the biggest opportunities that you have that can be resolved very elegantly with a digital solution, right? So keeping that in mind, we are focusing first on the customer and say, how can we enhance our customers' experience with our products and our company through a digital experience? So one of the things that we have done is a global platform for IoT, where all our machines will be connected. The way we have architected the solution is a very affordable architecture. So we can pretty much extend this facility to almost all customers, irrespective of the size of the compressor. Now, the value proposition for the customer is basically, with that device, we will be able to significantly reduce the downtime for the customer. And we do that by being able to predict a failure rather than react to a failure, right? So when we have the ability to predict failures through our IoT platform, and by the way, we call it Air Alert, and this is something that we will use increasingly to enhance the customer's experience, not only with the product, but also with the company. So that's an example. And we are using IoT inside our factory to constantly look at how we can improve productivity and quality, right? So that's about more efficient, instant gathering of data that will give us agility in our decision.
According to you, a person who has traveled across the world. What are the strengths and the weaknesses of an Indian entrepreneur?
An Indian entrepreneur is an extremely resilient person, right? When you operate in India, you don't operate, you operate under extremely tough conditions, restrictions, lack of resources, the infrastructure is not as good as the rest of the world. So as much as you concentrate on the fundamentals of your business, you also need to manage the environment, and there is so much of distraction there, right? By virtue of all this, an Indian entrepreneur has become very, very resilient. So with a resilient entrepreneur, you put him in an environment where the environment takes care of itself and supports you. Your ability to produce results is just phenomenally more, right? So that's on the positive side. But on the negative side is that, right from independence, we have always been an inward looking country, right? And because of our inward looking mindset and psyche, we always look at as India out opportunity rather than a global in opportunity, right? So we need to, that's a weakness. We need to make a mental shift whereby we look at the world as an opportunity. And by the way, I will also sell in India rather than say, oh, I make it in India. Oh, and by the way, I will sell it outside the country, right? So that shift has to happen.
So you're basically talking about having a global outlook to your business rather than having a local dimension to your business.
Yeah, it's global centricity. It's not even an outlook. Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of new opportunities are you exploring uh, globally as well as in India?
We are steadfast in our commitment to remain in the compressor business. And of course, the compressor business has got a very wide saddle. And even though we play in close to 80% of that space, there are opportunity for improvements and expansion in the adjacencies in that, right? So we are constantly looking to expand that portfolio that we give to the customer so that we are able to give them a complete solution. So that's an ongoing process. Uh, as a and in technology also, we are looking at how can we create breakthrough changes, that opportunities for which exist. So I'll give you an example. I mean, when the smartphone first came, they all had buttons, right? Nobody would have even imagined that phones would become, just touch screens and no buttons, right? So what is that? What is a similar transformation for the compressor, right? And we see there are opportunities of a similar nature, right? And we are pursuing and we are developing those kinds of technologies inside the company. So this is really the envelope that we are working
So because of COVID, a pandemic,
on. Yeah.
how are you recalibrating your growth plans for this year as well as the next year?
So we continue to be even more committed to our aspiration called CK2, which is Conquer K2, to be number 2 in the world. We are, in fact, we are more committed to it now than before. So that remains. That has not changed. We are not even for a minute reconsidering it, not at all. But this is a crisis which has two critical dimensions. One, we need to understand what is the bottom of this crisis, right? How, what will be the bottommost point that the company will hit, right? And the second is how long will it take for it to recover from this bottom, right? So these are the two dimensions that are critical for us to calibrate as accurately as possible. The situation is very uncertain, so it's very difficult to put an exact number on it. So you have to work with multiple scenarios and say that it could be this, it could be that. So you work with multiple scenarios and you create financial stamina inside the organization to be able to withstand whichever scenario comes in, right? Now, when the way the world looks like, it's going to bring that the drop, the bottom is going to be a pretty large percentage drop for all businesses. It's not, maybe there are some businesses like pharmaceutical, basic food essentials, FMCG, they will continue to sustain at a reasonably good level. But most other businesses would hit a deep bottom. Now, when you hit a deep bottom like that, the current business model that you've been running is no longer relevant. You know, if you take a a simple financial crisis or an economic crisis, you can retain your business model, tweak your financial parameters a little bit and continue on. But this situation is going to be so deep that you need to go back and revisit the fundamental assumptions of your business model, recalibrate it, reorient it, and redirect.
So have you started operations at your plants?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have, but in a very calibrated way. It's not like, excuse me, it's not like there is a huge demand that is pent up and available. Even the demand side is going to take time to recover. So as a consequence, we are doing a graded kind of a wrap up of our facility.
Okay. So finally, what are your long-term growth goals for ELGi?
Our long-term aspiration, like I told you, is CK2, which stands for Conquer K2, and K2 is the second tallest mountain in the world and the most difficult one to climb. And that kind of represents our ambition, which is to be number 2 in the world. So that's really our long-term direction. Now, we have calibrated that long-term direction into specific medium-term, short to medium-term strategies, and we are focused on rolling them out. And we have certain key markets that we want to focus on. We are investing into those key markets as a means to grow them, and that's really what this journey is all about for us.
Could you please elaborate on which are the key markets for you?
So we are now operating in about 100 countries, right? And we will continue to do that, right? But that's business as usual. We continue to work with our distributors in those countries. But there are strategic markets, which is Australia, Indonesia, Thailand, India, Europe, and the US, right? These 6 geographies are strategic, which means that we will invest disproportionately in terms of our time, in terms of our resources, and in terms of people to be able to gain traction into these markets.
Thank you, Dr. Jairam, for spending time with IPF, and all the best for 2020 and beyond.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.